This is Jason Tolbert, and I'm here with a fellow conservative blogger, Michelle Malkin, who's in town this weekend. Michelle, tell us, what are you doing in Little Rock this weekend?
Well, I was invited by the Americans for Prosperity and the Arkansas State Tea Party organization to come and speak. I will focus my remarks mostly on this healthcare battle. But, you know, I've been following the Tea Party movement from the beginning of the year, before it was even called the Tea Party movement. And, you know, one of the perks of my job and what I do has been being able to go across the country and see what's going on with all the chapters, local and state, and it's been fascinating to me. And I also think, Jason, that there has been a vacuum in mainstream media coverage of what's been going on the ground. I think there's been so many liberal elites in the mainstream media who have already convicted or framed or pegged the Tea Party movement as some sort of outgrowth of the Republican Party, and I think that that mischaracterization has obviously colored their view of what's going on, and they're missing the big picture and the real story.
Sure. Well, that's actually one of the questions I want to talk to you about. You know, the Tea Party movement, it's kind of a new movement. Tell me how you think it's going to impact the 2010 election cycle. It's really the first election cycle that we're going to see it develop and have an influence.
Yeah.
How do you think it's going to change the landscape?
Well, take a look at some of the polls that have been done recently. I think there was a Rasmussen poll last week that came out that showed that the generic Tea Party was doing better than the GOP itself. And I've said from the very beginning that this movement is not as much an anti-Obama and anti-Democrat movement as it is a grassroots revolt against the GOP establishment. And if you look at races from the GOP Senate battle between Marco Rubio and Charlie Crist to the Senate battle between Chuck DeVore and Barbara Boxer in California, even to Colorado, where I live, you see the grassroots Tea Party movement, fiscal conservatives, very unhappy with how these national GOP establishment funders and organizations are trying to anoint candidates without any input from the grassroots. This is where I think the Tea Party movement will have the most leverage and the most power and influence. And obviously look at the New York 23 special district race, where you had a preordained liberal radical, Dede Scazafava, who absorbed nearly $1 million worth of grassroots conservatives' money. And people are standing up saying no. I think the Tea Party movement has inspired so many people to get into politics for the first time in their lives, where the GOP establishment has not offered any kind of inspiration. And to the extent that this pulls the Republican Party more towards its core values and principles, and specifically with fiscal conservatism over the last year, this is a very, very good thing.
Well, how does a state like Arkansas, a very conservative state, but tends to usually vote Democrat? You know, we have 2 Democrat senators, we have 3 Democrat congressmen, only 1 Republican congressman. How do we tap into that conservative movement here in the state to flip things around?
That's an interesting question, and we're seeing this in Colorado as well, which is more purple, obviously, than your red state. But, you know, outside of Arkansas, the rest of us conservatives have learned to manage our expectations of these so-called moderate Democrats, and we've not had a very good record when it comes to holding those moderate Democrats' feet to the fire. And it seems to me that, you know, Arkansas fiscal conservatives, that's where you should be, and obviously that's what you're doing, trying to hold Blanche Lincoln to her moderate stance.
Well, what are your thoughts on Blanche Lincoln? Obviously, she's played a huge role in the health care debate. What are your thoughts on how she's influenced the debate?
Well, she's one of those linchpin figures like, you know, Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins and, you know, are ostensibly in our party. And I haven't followed her as closely as some of these, you know, Republican moderates who've held a lot of sway and a lot of power and leverage. But I've heard a lot of complaints from folks about the sort of the Hamlet-like stances that she's taken. And, you know, to the extent that the Tea Party movement has called her out and kept pressure on her, I think that's a very good thing.
Sure. Well, one, kind of switching subjects again, but keep it on Arkansas politics, just kind of my final question. You've written a lot about Governor Mike Huckabee. You're here in his hometown today. What are your thoughts on whether he'll run for president in 2012? And what are his chances? What baggage does he bring into that?
I think, obviously, that after the Lakewood Police Department massacre in Washington State, that his chances have been perhaps irreparably damaged. And I know that he's been on a rather vehement campaign to try and do damage control in the wake of that. But to the extent that that particular case casts greater and hotter light on his overall clemency record and the decisions that he's made, I don't think it serves him very well. Now, I want to talk about specifically my coverage of that case, because I was not one of those people who cast it or framed it in this political way. I've covered police department shootings and massacres and the effect of the left's war on police for a long time, and I also had somewhat of hometown ties to the Puget Sound area. I lived in Seattle for 3.5 years and was very close to people in Seattle and Tacoma in the police department. So it hit hard for me and hit in a very personal way. I do have to tell you, Jason, that I've heard from many people, not just partisan Democrats, but a lot of conservatives and a lot of family members of people who've been affected directly by his clemency decisions, who are very unhappy with the way that he's managed his PR campaign in the wake of that shooting.
Great. Well, we appreciate you spending time talking with me, and welcome to Little Rock. Hope you have a great time in Arkansas while you're here.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Great. Thanks.